Everyone, welcome to Garranto Expert Talk. This is new initiative from Garranto to get expert advice on future of the jobs and skills. Today's topic is Agile transformation, typical challenges and potential solutions. So I would request Dr. Koti to take it forward.
Thank you, Sheena and Sri and Garranto for starting such a kind of good gesture and initiative in the new year 2022. I'm sure this will be a good platform for many people. Starting with this Agile transformation, I think there are many more lined up. I'm really positive and looking forward to give some good value to the community as a whole. So with that, let me get started. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
Good, excellent. So I don't think I need or you need my introduction. I am Dr. Koti. Quickly to just talk about myself, having about 3 decades of experience, and out of which I spent almost 1 decade into Indian Air Force and then a couple of decades into IT world. As part of my journey, I'm fortunately connected with the complete Agile space since 2001, since our Agile manifesto started. And I've been working in various organizations in various capacities, right from Scrum Master role to the offshore project manager in the Agile space kind of roles, and also working for some time in the sustaining engineering department as well. And I try to overall provide exposure to the people in various capacities, not only limiting to the kind of what you call Scrum or Kanban or anything for that matter. I try to support people what they need based on the context, because marrying to one particular framework does not make sense, right? It is the context what counts at the end of the day for the people. As part of my journey, I try to do everything possible in the Agile space. Let it be Kanban, let it be engineering practices from the XP, let it be Scrum, Nexus, Spotify, Less, and of course, SAFe is a big way. I did transformation for some times. And today I wanted to talk about what is that I learned in my course of experience in the last 2 decades. Very high level, talking about why, what, and how. That is how I am here. I hope you will be able to get some insights. What is this real Agile transformations, typical challenges, and potential solutions? Very high level. It is not the end, it is just a beginning, just to talk about what it means for you. Right? Again, I was mentoring many organizations, not limiting to IT. I am fortunate to work in manufacturing for some time, especially the carrier air conditions and the vortex elevators. That was a small stint I did, experimented in a complex world how Agile can be implemented. Because most of the people think we cannot do Agile in manufacturing, especially those kind of products. What do you do in air conditions? What do you do in vortex elevators? And people are talking about massive information systems in the building intelligence itself. So people are going beyond our imaginations implementing SAFe. One of the prototype we did when I was with United Technologies. Of course, it's very well done in the space of healthcare, predominantly for the last 1 decade. And banking, you know that pretty much it is the bread and butter in most of the organizations. Some people are gone beyond our imagination. Some people are just starting the steps in terms of this agility. So let us explore something together now. And I'll talk about certain important aspect. Then at the end, we'll keep about 15 minutes time for the questions and answers. Based on how do you progress, we can increase or decrease some of the questions and answers at the end. So a quick agenda for today is why, what, how, and Q&A at the end. So what is this why, what, and how on the Agile transformation? What does this means for us? So let us talk about why part first. A small video here. let me play this video for you and see what reflections comes to your mind here. I'm talking about, this is all about mindset at the end of the day.
I figure 75% to you, Panma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Yida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm a pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25... 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Really, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, look, Ma. Look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14, 14, 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
So that is a story little bit on the mindset, right? So if you think this is how the life is all about, nobody can change you. If you are not ready to change, now the reality is the reality, whatever it is in front of us, right? Now, how do you people look at the things is what matters, and the same story exactly applies in the Agile transformation. Now, people think this is what Agile transformation without understanding what are the fundamental tenets around that. And people also talk to you about how can you prove that Agile is working even today, in spite of 2 decades of Agile manifesto history. There are many people reaping the benefit. There are many people even not able to relate what it means, unfortunately. Because of this mindset issues in the traditional way of working, this is how the life is all about. You cannot go beyond that aspect. And hence I thought this video makes some sense to talk about how that mindset looks like, what it that means in general way of thinking. Now, another important thing you need to understand here is, what is that a translation means for you, a transition means for you, a transformation means for you. And this is another biggest trap what people fall into without understanding the real transformations. So by changing some of the terminologies of the transformational language or enterprise level terminology, or thinking about by just doing some mapping of the people, does not change our ways of life or does not change our value to the customers. Translation is simple way of mapping things of your organization in the context of the frameworks and thinking they will do the wonders. It is after all a translation of the things. Transition means you are working in a way of life. You wanted to move to a different point in time with a different ways of life. Now, going from point A to point B does not make you to transform. It is a simple transition with the ways of working. Ultimately, the goal is transformation, and which is what important for the people to understand. This is what complete game changing, right? In the way you work, the way you think, the way you behave over a period of time culturally across the board. It is not about your target of point A to point B. So this is the real transformation, what we all need to understand over a period of time. It is the people who can make or break the things by changing the way we think and act, not by translating and transitioning to points and to points. And it is a turbulence journey. It's not a plain vanilla. Transformation comes with a lot of courage, lot of patience, lot of investment. And one has to prepare to understand first and to take the next steps there. And another important thing you need to understand is this adoption and maturity. Let us say I'm going to talk about my organization is doing agile transformation and we have adopted 80%. What is the meaning of adoption of 80%? Where is the maturity? If you ask what is the maturity, nobody has any clue. We trained so many people. We started so many trains. We launched trains. We are doing blah, blah, blah. Adoption does not guarantee the maturity. What makes sense at the end of the day is the maturity. How do you see the benefit because of the new behaviors? What is that you are trying to do? This is another aspect you need to understand. Maturity over adoption, right? Just transforming people does not help if you don't see the business outcomes at the end of the day. Now, if you look at some of the global numbers, state of digital transformation as per the latest Boston Consulting Group survey. Now, globally on the digital transformation, we reached a staggering 6.8 trillion by 2023. Now we can understand the amount of effort of investment happening. Now, but the sad truth on the other side, 70% of the digital transformation falls short of their objectives. And it's often with profound consequences because people wanted to put the money because everybody else is doing. How it makes sense? Why do you care about what others are doing? Not many people understand the realities of their own ways of life. And what is our product? What is our customer? What is our technology? What is the need? What is the mean of digitalization for you? Under the modernization of the things, again, everybody is pouring the money. Unfortunately, having money does not take you anywhere. And sometimes people start blaming everything else after the transformation or so-called transitions or translations. Now, if you look at the future, it is all about artificial intelligence, big data, and cloud. That is what most of the organizations are reaping the benefit already. And most of the organizations are aiming towards. Without having these three elements in the game, I think people will be outdated very soon. Before they get outdated, they need to bring that inclusiveness on every dimension to bring that agility. So we are talking about business agility for some time, bringing the all enabling functions of the organizations to bring onto one mindset of thinking together, that lean thinking and everything. Is that enough? You need to also think about the agility into all these dimensions, without which probably you will not be able to sustain down the line. This is where the emerging trends and marketplace changes happening day in, day out across the globe, across the domains. Now, that is a little bit on the why part of the game of these transformations, how Agile can play a bit of the game. Now, what we need to do, the question. Now, when we're talking about this real business agility here, we must really think about what makes our business agile, how the opportunities are going to knock the doors. And we always need to think about some minimum viability into the game. You cannot change everything overnight. What is that you are going to do to make sure that there is a solid evidence on the ground in terms of business outcomes? Now, if you want to achieve that business outcomes for a period of time, you need to first place sense the opportunity on your way. What is your context? What is your opportunity there? Then you need to think about funding that MVP, making sure that we are creating the value around that, and then connect to the customer, deliver the MVP. Then you can think about whether we should pivot it or pursue it. Then it can make you to take some valid decisions before you invest more money. If you are not going to do this kind of lean startup mentality, it is very, very difficult. It may become another mini waterfall kind of thinking under the camouflage of the business agility. And what are the opportunities you are taking in the enterprise to get there is what matters. Your IT alone cannot do the business agility. How are you empowering all the technology people across the domains? How do you bring all the business people together into the same game is what can dictate your real business agility. If you are optimizing locally, not considering all that factors, as I always say, one thing, it is local optimization, global disaster. You cannot make any difference by running fast in between alone. We need to think about the all spectrum of the organization from all dimensions to bring the business agility. And it takes time. It's not a overnight journey again. It is the intentions behind what we do, why we do, and have that patience of the both time and money. Right? Just by sending people for some training, it does not change anything. Right? If you don't have the right mindset in the organization, right leadership, right thinking, understanding the customer, this business agility will not be possible. As part of this transformation or adoption, both the cycles, based on what you choose to implement, you must think about three things here. How do you make the game iterative and incremental over a period of time, rather than going a big bang approach of transformation, which does not work? Whenever you are talking about transformation, you must understand first and foremost the personal transformation. It requires a decent efforts. Organizational transformation overall by adopting the right practices. If you ignore any of these pieces, none of them alone will be able to be successful for you. Then you may need to regret at the end. So what is this organizational transformation is all about? So how do you design this top-down approach of the value creation? And how do you make sure that we are descaling the people in terms of that value creation? Obviously, many people talk about scaling agile means we need to do a big bang kind of approach overnight. If you want to scale the value, you need to descale the people. This is one of the hidden fact not many people understand. When you are descaling the people means you are dividing and conquering the complete organization in terms of making small and nimble agile teams around those values system in the organization. And of course, you can define certain organizational working agreements across the portfolios and everything to make sure that we understand the boundaries of the organization. We also understand the overall aim of the organization. If that is ignored, if we try to focus on elsewhere, it does not make sense. This is the first thing we all must understand from the organizational transformation standpoint of view. Then adopting practices, most of the people think by bringing some framework, by talking about some ways of working, it will change the game. Not necessarily. That is only a process point of view. Having the right rules in the system is the key to make it that happen. And also practicing the right approaches, what we call practices. Some people call engineering practices, some people call some practices in general. Now practices could be from engineering culture, from process related, from people related. There are many practices we need to adopt. So without having the right roles in the organization, it is very unlikely that you will be able to successful. It's very, very important as part of that practices adopting all dimensions, people, process, technology. And there are certain practices what you need to understand to transform by adhering to them, not just learning them. Then personal transformation. So this is all about when there are people involved, there are emotions involved in the game. In the emotions, there are always ambiguity and conflicts across. So the best way or the best approach in a complex world is how do you create that empiricism in the system? How do you create the transparency? How do you inspect and adapt over a period of time? And how do you align all of these people for a common purpose? So if you don't empathize or if you don't have the emotional intelligence when people are involved in a value creation, I think it's not going to help you. Because personal transformation is all about having emotional empathy on the people. Whatever the great things you are going to do or build together for any organization, they all involve people. Without people, no tools and techniques can do wonders for you. Even to the highest level of maturity of AI ops and everything you go, still we need people. Complete augmented reality or artificial intelligence does not work. Maybe it will cut down certain people, but still people are the main component of any ecosystem. And of course, when you are reducing that utilization of the people, you are going to maximize the value. Sometimes it is another threat to the people. What if this AI go to the next level, we lose the jobs? Not necessarily, right? We are going to create more value when you are saving the manpower. Why are you saving the manpower? This is the biggest asset anybody can not afford otherwise. We are leveraging tools and techniques to do the manual things, to do the automated way of thing, to do some predictions about the future. That is the analytics part of the world. But at the end of the day, having the right people in the system, right skill set and building the right talent, which makes complete transformation possible. Without transforming people, no organization can achieve their greatest heights. And that is possible by following certain practices on those people, process, and technology aspect. And those organizations who are serious about these transformations, they plan these things systematically. Nobody will go overnight to start the transformation. And I have seen people taking decently from 3 to 5 years to get into this kind of maturities with the intention of doing the right things from the day one. Right? So this is very, very important thing to understand the 3 dimensions of the transformation cycle. You must address all these aspects if you want to really achieve the sustainable organizational change. If you focus on one thing, if you ignore the other aspects, still it's not going to reap the benefit of the overall organizational business agility. If you want to make the complete difference, if you want to make your product fit for purpose, that is a mandatory step. And more than creating a value for one time, how do you sustain that product in the commercial space is what important, right? Sometimes we can do by hook or crook to get somewhere, or becoming number one is not a big deal. How do you sustain that number one is what matters. And those people who understand the sustaining part of the game is very crucial, even difficult than achieving the number one. That is what we must understand and respect and create an ecosystem which can make you to sustain in the long run. Now, the problem in general with this agile transformation is it is not about adopting agile. As I mentioned in the beginning, adoption is not a question or it is not a concern. Anybody can adopt agile as long as they understand what it is. Now, what is the goal? What we need to do in principle? It is to improve the business outcomes. When you are talking about business outcomes, the end user perceived value against the time they are investing. That is what most important aspect. Sometimes people talk about ROI. ROI is only one aspect, right? Return on the investment is one aspect. Those matured organizations started thinking about ROTI, if you heard about ROTI, return on time invested. I do care about how much time I'm investing today. What is the value I'm getting? What is the time we are investing today for this session? That is what important, right? Who cares about money? Money does not matter at times. And most of the time in the business sense also. It is the time what is changing the complete landscape today. That is the cost of delay, it is changing the game. So if you want to improve the business outcomes, it is the returns what the time we are investing as an organization. Because money can be earned anytime, right? You cannot gain the same time on the timeline. And it is a loss of opportunity. What are the great things you do in future? Who cares? You should be just in time. What is the need of the hour? Then how part little bit here and to give some ideas. Now, most of the people started thinking about can we do Agile? Can we implement Scrum? Or what is that we are trying to achieve? Usually there is a confusion to most of the people whether the way we do things today are going to fitting into this environment or not. So while Agile can be applied anywhere, there are certain ways you need to understand. That is what I am calling applicability of the Agile here. Now, what is this means? If you look at this picture, anything and everything what we do revolves around three things. It is the requirements and the competency from the people, and it is the technology we use. I hope everybody is getting that. Anything and everything we do, we need to have the clarity on the requirements. And we need to have the people to do that work. And we need to have the technology or solutioning part of it. So when you are looking at these three dimensions anytime, so we can categorize all these regions into certain ways. Let us say you are at the horizon of this graph here. When you are at the center, what is that meaning of these three dimensions? Certainty and uncertainty on the edges of this graph. So when you are here, you are 100% certain about what you need to do. And when you are here, in terms of the people, you have all the people required to get that requirements. Or you also have all the competencies it requires to get the job done. And on this axis, when you're talking about here, you have 100% clarity on how to do that. What technology, how to do, what problem you need to solve, how to get there, you have the clarity. When you have the clarity in all these three things, we say you are at here. We say everything is known here. This region, everything is known. You have absolutely no problem. You can do the things the way it can. Then as you start traveling on these three graphs here, that certainty is getting reduced, that uncertainty is getting increased. Now, when you come somewhere on this graph here, right, less uncertain, more certain, probably. Here also, more certain, less uncertain. You are here somewhere at a 2/3 of the graph here. And also when you are here on the people region, we have reasonably good people to do the work. We may not have all the people, but decently we have the people. That's what more certainty kind of. This region we say where knowns are greater than unknowns. This region, everything is clear, everything is known. Here knowns are greater than unknowns. As you start moving further, unknowns are becoming greater than knowns. As you go beyond, many things are unknown or everything is unknown. As you go to the extreme of the axis here, everything is uncertain. Now the question is, based on this understanding of where you fall in the spectrum of the three dimensions as an organization, how much you know about your requirements, how much you don't know. How much you have the people readiness, how much you don't have the people readiness and their competencies, of course. And how much you know the solutioning part of it, how much you don't know. If you pick up on this graph, you may fall somewhere in the spectrum. And what we're saying here is, Agile, where you can adapt to reap the benefit is in the complex region, where unknowns are more than knowns. When everything is known, we call simple region. When everything is unknown, we say chaotic region. When knowns are more than unknowns, complicated region. When unknowns are more than known, we say complex region. So basically, when you understand your dynamics based on your context, you know now where Agile can be applied or should be applied more than can be applied. In a complex world, as we are talking about many times, where Agile can be applied, it is a complex region. It is a complex world when not many things know in the beginning, only little bit ideas you are having, a small vision is evolving, you can start experimenting the Agile. If you implement Agile in complicated region, it may be working, but it is not the real business case for the Agile. You may do many other things to see the complicated region. In simple region, when everything is clear, you need not to do any framework probably. Things can work as it is, or waterfall can do wonders. When everything is known, you think here, waterfall might be the best thing to do, then nothing is changing. Why do you care about Agile there? If you go to everything unknown chaotic region, nothing will work. Of course, even Agile does not make any sense there when everything is uncertain. So that's the way you need to think. If you want, there are many Excel sheets and assessment tools are available if you go on Google as well. What are the feasibility assessment matrix Excel sheets kind of things? So there are certain questions where people can go and spend time based on the scores around your projects or products. It will tell you the story whether it makes sense to go for Agile or not. And unfortunately, most of the people think Agile is a silver bullet. We all should go and apply without understanding these dimensions. This graph is also called as Stacy model, a person who has done some research, and also kind of a network diagram, a Snowden, another person who originally done this research and analysis around in a complex world, how things can be seen differently on these 3 dimensions. This is a little bit on the applicability part of it. So we have understand the why part of the game, then what we need to do to bring the business agility. Then we are talking about adoption part of it in terms of applicability. How do you see that in the how part of the game? Once you understand the applicability, of course, then you need to understand what is the feasibility assessment you might be doing. So how do you look at whether we should be able to do or what kind of work and what kind of framework, and when do you think this is possible to do? And we are talking about Scrum, Kanban, many more frameworks as well. Which one is feasible kind of thing? So I see some questions here. You want to ask now or at the end? Somebody is raising the hand.
Yeah, Dr. Koti Surya here. My question is assessing, my organization is now in that stage of assessing whether the Agile framework can be adopted or work. Is there any references or is there any details which I can go through in order to assess whether my organization is in the right stage to do that? Because we would like to know, I understand the concept which you have described, but what are the tools available for us to evaluate? If you can share later those references, it will be of great help.
Sure. I will do that. And also, I have written all these things in my book, also Pragmatic Agility, to the extent it requires. Beyond that, you may need to go and explore more. Also, I see a question about graphs and all. This is depicted in a way in this presentation. Maybe you will be getting a PDF copy if it requires, and you can use it as appropriate after this session. And the feasibility, and also park the questions maybe towards the end. We'll give some enough time to go over all the questions, just to keep the flow on and to make sure that just we are covering the important topics as well. So then, what are the dependencies and your intake or the programs and overall architecture of the organization? There are many more parameters you need to think about when you're assessing your current projects. Because I am still using projects here, because that's what the way of life in many of the organizations. If I keep that as a product, not even every organization can understand that, right? Until unless you are a product-based organization. Now, Agile feasible, based on that, how do you know that feasible or not? We just talked about, right? That is what you need to spend some time on the due diligence of what environment you are into. Are you in a simple environment or complex environment? Or in a chaotic environment? We don't know. You need to do that assessment here. Once you decided, you need to think about what is that makes sense? We are saying if it is not feasible for a good reason, continue with waterfall. Waterfall is not a bad thing. It can do a lot of great things based on your context here. If yes, think about what kind of products or projects you are working upon. Are you working on a maintenance or new product? If it is a new product, go to Scrum. If it is a maintenance, go to Kanban. It is again a high-level guidance, by the way. And again in the Scrum, what is that maturity of the engineering practices? If there is no maturity, maybe you need to improve that. And if there is a maturity, probably you need to think about further enhancement of the customer satisfaction and beyond. Of course, beyond that, this can go on and on based on the number of teams working on this environment. You can think about different scaling Agile frameworks as well. And that's where this picture will give you some insights on how do you choose the right life cycle here. So discipline Agile delivery, extreme programming, and DevOps, these are the things you can use across any framework. They are not constrained by a framework, or they are not frameworks by themselves to incorporate independently. If you understand, discipline Agile delivery is called as a toolkit. It is not a framework if you understand discipline Agile. Now, extreme programming is a framework at par with Scrum, but not many organizations does XP as a whole end-to-end life cycle. Every organization adopts some of the engineering practices from the XP, like pair programming, refactoring, test-driven development. People adopt some practices. So you can still apply that on top of any framework you are going to choose. DevOps is another way of bringing the maturity of the continuous delivery to the customer that can be applied regardless of what framework you use. So I kept that concerns as separate, DAD, XP, and DevOps, which can be leveraged across. Then I given some idea of how do you start this transformation based on your requirements here. So is the dynamically varying requirements? No, you can definitely do a traditional Kanban. If the requirements are changing very often, very dynamically, if the answer is yes, what is that frequency? If the frequency is less, then you can go to the standard Kanban in the IT. If the frequency is more, you can use either of these. Scrum makes sense if you want to pull a batch. Kanban makes sense if you want to pull by WIP limits. Sometimes Scrum will say batch push, whereas Kanban is a pull system. Now, how many teams are working on that value? Large number of teams using Scrum, then you can go to either less, Scrum at Scale, Nexus, or Spotify. If not every team is working in Scrum, then you can go to SAFe or a connected Kanban system. There is a enterprise service level planning of the Kanban is as well. Like the SAFe, there is a connected Kanban system as well to scale up enterprise when the teams are not everybody using Scrum. So this diagram also help you to think when to apply Scrum, when to apply Kanban, and when to go for less Scrum at Scale and Nexus, when to go for SAFe. So as you see here, it is clearly calling out when most of the teams are using Scrum, these things make sense, which is not the case in the real time. Not necessarily that everybody is using only Scrum. And so that is the reason why SAFe is so popular in terms of industry penetration in the today's world, right? This is again little bit guidance on the life cycle selection based on your nature of the product lines or your context. Now, some of the general challenges in the Agile transformation. Now, most of the people don't understand that business agility, as I mentioned about it, and they don't spend enough time on hypothesis validation. They directly jump onto the guns and then they probably don't get the result as expected. And people try to blame all the frameworks. it does not make sense if you don't validate in the beginning. And also, there is no compelling reason to the people to transform. Of course, first place, they don't understand the difference between translation, transition, and transformation. Even if somebody is serious about transformation by understanding, the challenge is about creating a good, compelling vision and a good strategy. And no two people will have the same meaning of strategy in the same organization. That itself is, again, becoming a challenge. And then most of the organization, the biggest struggle is leadership buy-in. And people try to learn something somehow they wanted to do. And then there is no interest in the organization because the leadership mindset is somewhere else. As you have seen in that video also, people have a layers of legacy things and they don't see a great benefit because of multiple their own reasons. If you want to really implement transformation, you remember that three-dimensional things I talked about, organizational practices and people. The organizational dynamics comes from the leadership, and the people aspect also come from the stakeholders from top-down approach. If you don't get into the top-down approach of transformations, it is very unlikely that you can be successful in the real time. However, the great people as an asset we have in the enterprise with the right skill set, it is the leadership which will make or break at the end of the day, especially these kind of transformations. And also, we don't have supporting functions knowledge as you are talking about for the business agility. Your functions which are enabling you does not have the knowledge. That is another problem. And also, you will face a lot of problem in terms of identifying the right life cycles. When we say the correct life cycles, what makes sense for you? Is it Scrum or Kanban or XP or FDD? There are many things available in the Agile space. Unfortunately, most of the people think Agile and Scrum are interchangeable. Agile means Scrum, Scrum means Agile. That is the level of clarity most of the people are having. They are not thinking beyond Scrum in the Agile space. How do you know that we need to pick the right life cycle? Scrum may not be the silver bullet for everybody, or Kanban may not be the silver bullet. What is your context? What are the things available? How do you choose the right one? Is also important. If you apply different frameworks which are not fitting into your environment, obviously results are not going to reveal what you expect. That is another issue in terms of choosing the right framework and life cycles. And of course, the another thing is the culture of the enterprise. We are talking about so many great things, then you don't have the right culture to support that, right? If you create a good culture, that will become the byproduct of getting there. Without changing anything culturally, if you are expecting a lot of things to happen, by doing the same old way of behavior, expecting a different results, that does not make sense. Culture is the key. And of course, sometimes I have seen people doing some good mapping of the people. Okay, let us call most or all of the project managers from tomorrow onwards Scrum Masters. Let us convert all the program managers to the next level of the servant leadership in the Agile. It could be RTE, it could be the tribal leader, it could be anything you call. Just mapping the roles to the new ways of life does not take you anywhere. It is the mindset, again, what it makes the complete difference. If you don't care about building the right mindset in the organization, by telling them what to do, how to think and act differently, naming conventions and translation does not make sense. This is another biggest problem. And most of the organizations are happy with some kind of investment, some kind of proofreading of the things happening in a watermelon kind of reportings. I practically seen organizations where I supported this watermelon reporting, unfortunately, because if you are in an organization supporting their goals, you need to just go with the flow, right? You cannot do too much about it. And people showcase, we have done XYZ things in the last 3 years. We transformed our organizations. This is what our adoption numbers. This is what our outcome looks like. But then that results are not revealing in the realities. That is what I mean by watermelon reporting. Looks green outside, deep red inside. People are living in the era where satisfying some stakeholders by taking the blessings and moving on. This is another biggest pain in most of the organization to showcase, yes, we are agile, by looking at the adoption numbers, by looking at some vanity metrics, by looking at some trial or lagging metrics. Nobody is focusing, or most of the people are not focusing on the leading metrics. They don't really care about what is happening in the customer space. They are happy with the space where they are working, thinking that is what the agility is all about. That is not agility, right? It is all about some ways of working to improve the things. At the end of the day, it is the customers you need to look at it if you really validate the maturity and the transformation success, not by doing many things, by really delivering what customer want and when they want. If that is not done, probably what are the great things we do does not make sense. And of course, beyond Scrum, I mentioned about it. Not going beyond Scrum is also another impediment for most of the organizations. And this leading and lagging and vanity metrics are equally important to take care. Use the metrics for what it makes sense. Don't measure everything because you can measure anything. And lack of engineering maturity is another biggest problem. Engineering maturity means everybody talks about quality, but nobody cares about proactive quality. Everybody will wait for a stable build to test something. What will you get on a stable build? All the trash in the system you can identify. Yes, we have 1,000 defects. Who cares now? Now that culture has to go by bringing the right engineering culture, which comes from proactive quality through built-in quality, which we call TDD, BDD, many more, test-driven development. That is the culture you need to promote if you want to go to speed to market to create the value to the customers. Now also, what I have seen is the agile coaches are becoming reporting agents to the leadership teams. Most of the agile coaches are not allowed to do the coaching at all. I have seen practically from my experience. They end up with collecting the data and reporting the metrics, which any layman can do if you tell where to collect, what to do. Unfortunately, all great talent is going in vain in terms of reporting that metrics to the people without any meaning. So that is the reason I'm talking about reporting analysts or reporting agents. And of course, not understanding the right frameworks, components, right ways of working and doing whatever makes sense, and then finally blaming the rest of the framework and components. Of course, last but not the least, again, the right growth mindset is the key for the success. And how do you behave as a servant leader is what matters. This challenge of the traditional mindset, the reason to show that video also the same reason. You cannot afford to think the same way you are expecting a different result. It is just impossible. First, you need to change the way you think. And of course, the results are byproduct of that. Now, if you really look at what are some kind of steps it requires in making your organization more successful, again, some ideas here from my experience. You have a compelling vision. You must have a burning platform to solve some problem differently. If you don't have a burning platform, which means a problem to solve, which means there is no compelling vision strategy, you will not go anywhere. So for everything to happen, have that compelling vision based on your context. That will drive the rest. As Steve Jobs says, you need not to tell people, right? All you need to provide them a great vision. Vision should drive the people to do the work. If you don't have the vision, where is that motivation to the people? And we hire smart people and we tell them what to do. Another pathetic story. When you hire smart people, don't tell them what to do. Give them the vision. Rest will happen. That is one of the great organizations doing, and they are successful. It is not a story to tell, it is the reality. All those great organizations have great vision, great strategy, and great empowerment. And of course, educate the leadership team. If we don't educate the leadership team, the top down buy-in is not possible. And create that long-term plans and short-term plans. Start realizing the short-term plans against the long-term objectives. That will give the buy-in, confidence, and more cost incurring around this kind of life. And also, you start creating the baselines. Baselines is very, very important to prove that the new ways of working is helping or not helping. If you don't have that clarity, it will be difficult for you to assess the outcome after that implementation. And you need to create a standard cadences to create these milestones to inspect and adopt. Maybe, for example, a fortnightly review, a monthly review cycles, or quarterly review cycles based on the products you are creating. And also create that right mindset of the people connected together for a good cause of the enterprise. That culture of growth mindset and empowerment will lead more autonomy to the people. And also, agile coaches must do coaching. If they are not doing coaching, if they are doing something else, it is not a good sign in any enterprise. Leverage the coaches for the coaching if you want to really maximize the value. Any other job can be done by anybody, right? Don't underutilize the capacity of the organization. That's the bottom line. And also, we have a lot of talent in the organizations. Try to leverage them to do the right work by nurturing them, by grooming them, by mentoring them. Most of the time, you run behind industry to choose the people of your choice by ignoring the internal talent, unfortunately. So if you can start respecting the internal talent, they can do wonders for you. And they will become more profitable for a period of time as well. So what I would strongly recommend is you encourage the internal talent to grow the roles for multiple benefits. They have very clarity on the ecosystem where they are. They understand the organizational dynamics very well. They can have a good relationship with the people in the long run, being internal. External hirings, consulting, and all those things are fair enough to understand the third party view of the things of your context. And then in the long run, I would recommend to encourage the internal talent to go to the next level of roles in the agile space. And make sure that all the functions in the enterprise are agile by again making sure that they are educated on this space as per their context. What a human capital team need to understand about agile, what a procurement team need to understand about agile, what a sales and marketing need to understand about agile. That is what, or that is where from your success comes. However, the great IT teams you are having to build a great value, if other functional elements are not at par with this mindset, trust me, it's all going to be in the vein. It does not make sense. And also, don't rely on the watermelon reports. Create a telemetry from the systems to have more transparency and prepared manually, we are digging our own ditch. And we have the luxury of manipulating the metrics as needed to the stakeholder. If you are relying on the systems through telemetry, that will give the reality of the systems, what is working, what is not. So create a culture of the telemetry in the organizations to get the metrics directly from the systems. Systems should speak about the current state of affairs, not somebody like you and me sitting and making a report out of the game, which does not make sense. So automated dashboards, which are connected to the live systems, which will give you massive information on the current state of affairs. So these are certain things to be focused upon if you want to be really focused on the success things. So some of the process changes from waterfall to Agile. Again, on the factors here, on the role mapping, requirements, releasing to accountability. Some ideas here, what we should do or what we should move from to where. From to. All these roles, PM, Dev, QA and all, they may become engineers, POs or SMs based on what they're aspiring and deserving. Requirement, all our so-called S documents, right? SRS, BRS and many other S use cases. We need to think about product backlog. Everything we do is around the product, so we call product backlog. And of course, they have their own formats of writing things within the product backlog. Your milestone base should be moving to less frequently cadences. Your scope from fixed to the variable, because fixed does not guarantee any success anyway. And customer involvement from the beginning to the end to part of the team. You may be making sure that they are not only at the edges of the game, they are always part of the game. And our goal is not to do things by hook or crook, not schedule driven. It is a value driven. What value we are creating. That is a mindset shift again to be changing. Of course, accountability from decentralized to centralized. You can think about that. Making sure that you are empowering the people to maximize that value and by reducing the turnaround time. These are some kind of transformational stuff to be considered. Then what are some metrics you need to be thinking about it on the maturity part of it? This is also important.
This is Vijay. On the previous slide, accountability, waterfall, decentralized, agile, centralized. Is it?
No, this is a typo basically. Okay. You need to be decentralized from centralized. Thank you for calling that out.
Okay.
So then, maturity point of the game, you need to really think about what are the metrics which are going to make sense to bring the maturity. We are talking about, it is not about adoption, it is about maturity. So business value is the way of life. It's no other metrics can replace this. Now, most of the people are struggling to figure out what is business value. Again, we need to educate the business people on identifying the value, which is abstracted to us in terms of dollar value. That's a different question altogether. But how do you see that business value on a scale? Time to market is important. It is not about time to build. You can also measure a metric called time to build. How long you take to build the product. Then how long you are sleeping before you go to market, who cares? If you don't go and hit the marketplace, whatever the value you created here does not make sense. Time to market is the key aspect to get the feedback sooner. Escape defect is the quality reflection of the work what we are doing. We don't care how many defects you fix in your system. We do care about how many defects are leaked to the customer, are gone to the hands of the customer, overlooking or not focused, or what are the reasons. Escape defect is the quality reflections. You must make sure that these numbers are very low. If you are increasing this escape defects, the quality is going for a toss. That essentially will actually make people not to trust, and you will lose the credibility. They will never come back to you. And another important thing you need to understand is, how are you flexible in terms of making customers changes to their requirements? We call requirement volatility index. Sometimes people say we cannot welcome this change now because it is late. I think Agile Manifesto also says you must welcome changes even late in the development. What does that means? Of course, you should have some governance, some regulatory kind of things on what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Our goal at the end of the day, how many items are changing from the time you plan till the time you deliver? We track them as requirements volatility index. The more the requirement volatility index, the better for the customers at the end of the day. Under feature usability index is how many features you are deployed to the marketplace and how many features are actually used by the customers. That is what feature usability index. If you get some clarity from that metric, in future, I don't want to spend time on unnecessary things of those kind of nature. You must create some trends for a period of time, what is interesting to the customer, whether we are making sense on everything we are creating or not. That will help you in the long run. Otherwise, it is not about sequencing and delivering. Sequencing for the lean economics does not guarantee that it is always true. You need to validate that from the marketplace. That is what feature usability index is all about. Then happiness index is from employees and at times customers. So the employees' point of view, when you start measuring their happiness because of in this type of environment, that will give you some sense of accomplishment to the people, the kind of levers you need to apply differently. Because in Agile, we are talking about speed to market, productivity and quality enhancement and everything. We also need to keep a tab on. We cannot afford to get all those things at the cost of employees. We need to still respect the emotions of the people and make them happy on everything what they're doing. By keeping that aspect into consideration, you should aim for the rest of the things. If you ignore this fact, you may get result one time, but not all the time, and people get attrited. Sometimes your product also will shut down when you don't have the right people to support you. So happiness index is one of the important aspects you need to think about. Then net promoter score is another aspect. Net promoter score is from the customer point of view, how happy they are from the work you are delivering to them. So how are you delivering, keeping employees happily is happiness index. How your customers are happy is net promoter score. Again, there are detractors, promoters, neutrals, and everything in that scale. People need to make sure that we have more promoters than detractors for the work what we are doing. That will help you to excel to the next level from the customers to have more reputation and the trust. So these are certain things on the maturity standpoint of view. What measures make sure that your relevance to the marketplace and you are making some sense on the maturity lines. So on the transformation part quickly, then this all looks nice, great. Then where do you start the game? So as part of any transformation, this training is part of the game, and you need to mentor the people as needed in the beginning. Then you need to start coaching the people. We need to create a collaborative environment for scaling up. You need to use the right tools and techniques, and then do some assessment on the baselines and maturity. So this is a kind of high-level view on what are the things you need to be careful during the transformation. Again, whatever I'm talking now in a nutshell, every item itself is a topic by itself to talk more. I'm trying to provide some insights on what is making some sense on the overall journey here to transform. And if you look at further on the strategy point of view, leadership transformation is the first thing, without which whatever the effort you are going to put is going to merely a wastage of time and money. You must start the game with leadership transformation. Of course, rest of all the things will be byproduct then. Because when your leadership says something, that message goes very differently in the organization. The expectation and all the behaviors will change accordingly. Without this, you may be able to feel like you are doing something differently, but it does not yield the business results. Skills and staffing assessment is the next thing you need to focus upon with that buy-in and transformation of the leadership thinking. And that gaps you need to use to bring the team transformation. That's what people transformation and readiness and competency. Choose the right strategy for tools and techniques. Again, sky is the limit for tools and techniques based on your organizational capability. What tool makes sense? Because it is the end of the day, the dashboards you need to automate the overall dynamics of the organization. I cannot pick and choose whatever I like, right? You need to make your tools compatible to one each other, to speak each other, to connect each other, so that the overall synergies of the reporting also happening. Selection of the tool strategy itself is a great thing to happen in any organization. Selection of tools just cannot happen like that. That itself is a great strategy. You must understand the context of your existing tools and systems so that you can pick the right tools which can be compatible. Then have a pilot. Don't go to the big bang experimentation. Do a small pilot. Use that as a learning curve and try to analyze the result and make more meaningful feasibility studies and assessing the right cycles. Then learning from there and approaches of the best practices from there, then try to enhance the journey to the next level. Of course, for a period of time, your enterprise transformation happens across the board with these typical steps involved in the game. Now, the journey when you wanted to start, of course, you need to create that compelling reason as we talked about. That is a step number one in the transformation. You need to have that communication from top-down approach, then identification of the pilot, then having that roles identification, training and coaching, pilot implementation, then creating a community of practices to make sure that they are cross-pollinating across the enterprise. Then look for that continuous excellence over a period of time. Then, of course, going to the next level of scaling based on the context over a period of time. So start with that little communication towards the maturity of the scaling enterprise based on your context. These milestones and everything over a period of time, you can draw a kind of roadmap also with that intention of when to start, what do you expect in the journey, by when. You can have different milestones as well. It is just to give a perspective of the transformation journey. So the last one here, I would like to talk about a little bit on the post-COVID scenario. I think it is too early to say post-COVID because COVID is not yet over. Things looks like going beyond our imagination. But then these few guidelines might be helpful as well. You need to charter the new digital ways of working. I'm talking about digital ways of working. It's not about ways of working anymore in this new business usuals. And in the new business normal, everything is about digitalization we are talking about. In the digitalization, we are doing everything in digital world. Now, you must trust your employees and empower them. Now, in this remote world, trust becomes the key. In an in-person world, trust is different. In a remote world, trust is different. Don't enforce anything. You just empower and enable the people. Enforcing does not work. Relax the rules the way the policies today. And you must really make sure that as much as possible, you are flexible enough to change all the policies and the protocols what you follow. I think nowadays, many things are being taken care in most of the organization, and those people are little in the front running or reaping the benefit already by tweaking some of these things. Gone those days, not supporting your work environment to do the right things. Once upon a time, I faced a big time challenge in a physical big building. I was not allowed to put a simple information radiator. Now you can imagine what kind of facility we are talking about. Now imagine where we are today in a remote digital world. Forget about those norms and rules anymore. It does not work. How do you use more tools and techniques to bridge the gap of this remote and distributedness? And dispersedness is the key today. No two people are sitting in the same room. Forget about distributedness. We are in the dispersed world today. And how do you bring this digital governance is also important, right? And also continue to share some good tips and tricks to your organization based on our experiences and from industry. What are some better approaches to deal with the things in this kind of world, which again can be part of your policies. And those policies need to amend from time to time. It's not about, yes, we change some policies, maybe this will be taken care for the life. No. What is changing from day to day? How things are happening? How are you flexible in accommodating the changes? Those who adapt fast, they are going to be winning the game. Those who are late in adopting the changes, they are going to be outdated. There is no other thinking about that. Focus on people first philosophy, right? Nowadays, I don't know about Singapore, at least in India, everybody is holding 4 offers. And you go mad if I say the figures of the people about the salaries. A 5 years person is holding 30 lakhs Indian rupees salaries today, which was a nightmare even to get 20 years of person few years back. Now, with the changing world, even organizations are thinking very differently on hiring the talent and retaining the talent. As I mentioned, nothing can replace the people in any system. And people are the most important asset for any organization. You need to have the highest possible respect and regards to respect the people and retain the people. Otherwise, anyway, there are many ways to figure out for the people. And of course, last but not the least, we need to abide with the regulatory and compliance and everything around the norms in wherever the country we are residing. Follow the government guidelines on what is making sense as per the relevance of the current situations. Don't take monopoly decisions about we can do anything because we have the money and power. Nothing beyond governments, right? So respect the government policies and protocols. Post-COVID especially, what are the norms about working culture? What are the people? How do you treat? All other things. First thing is government, then rest of the things will follow. That's what I would say. Some of the things what you need to tweak in the interest of post-COVID to be successful. Otherwise, trust me, if you don't care about all these things, we have seen enough organizations shut down in the COVID times. At the same time, many organizations taken the birth also. How somebody can take the birth, they are taking this as an opportunity. Somebody could not sustain because they don't have any levers of sustaining, because they were loosely coupled all the things what they were doing all these years. So make sure that we are respecting all of these people, emotions and governments, and make sure that you are tweaking your policies in the interest of making your organization success. So that's all pretty much from there. Maybe if you want to really go for a transformation, gather the data, do the feasibility study, have a transformation strategy, train the people, implement, then assess, baseline, targets, start coaching the people to the next level, improve and sustain and accelerate. This is what step-by-step approach you think about. One step at a time, no big bang, with small step together towards the success. So as Charles Darwin says, another interesting fact here, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Whether you like it or not, as we all understand, it is the only constant in the life. How soon you can adapt to the changes happening in the marketplace is what makes you to be successful. If you ignore this fact, however the great company you are, maybe if not today, tomorrow you need to shut down. And we have seen enough examples historically who are not ready to change. What happened to them? You all know that. So with that, I would like to take a pause. We have about 10 to 11 minutes. If any questions we can take. That's all from my side to deliver some important content on the Agile transformation. So back to...
Hi, Dr. Koti.
Yeah.
It's good to see you again. So can I ask, for this kind of agile transformation, it seems like it's a long process, right? Is there any like tools or frameworks, or like how do they come up with the roadmap? Is there something specific to the organization, or is that like a, there's a Scrum is a framework that's popular, right? How about for transformation? Is there a popular implementation roadmap or framework for that?
So there is no popular as such one solution for any organization. What is working very well for most of the organization is leading change. There is a powerful book by John P. Cotter. That John P. Cotter book talking about 8-step process for any organization change. I would say that is the one of the best possible book on the planet today for anybody to transform systematically one step at a time. And of course, SAFE also looked at as a guideline. They created their own roadmap of SAFE implementation as well. It is the SAFE who adapted the implementing change book. Similarly, if you go to different organizations, based on what Porter is talking about, that 8 step, they try to customize them. What is step number 1? What is step number 2? What is step number 3? I would strongly recommend use that leading change book as a blueprint for the success for any transformation. In that process, you will identify what is that you should do in step 1, what is that you do in step 2, based on your organizational context. Hope that might be helpful in a way to take that systematic approach.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Oti, I have one question regarding the Scrum. If the organization is saying that we need a Scrum, but he's an individual contributor, is it really a correct phrase to say?
I did not got that question completely. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, we need the Scrum Master, but he is an individual contributor for the organization. Maybe some of the vendors, they have the developers and all, which they are going to manage. So is it the correct term to say it's a Scrum Master? Just now in your discussion, you're saying something. Yeah.
Sorry?
Just now in your discussion, you're saying something like they will give the position, but they don't allow you to do anything. Something like that. Yeah.
So basically, if you am understanding correct what you are saying, how do you source the Scrum Master role? Is that question? Or Scrum Master is an individual contributor? Is that correct? What is that real question? I am a little bit confused.
Okay. Scrum Master need to work as an individual contributor.
Right. That is true, because most of the organizations don't have that luxury of reporting people to the Scrum Master for a good reason. Now, Scrum Master is a competency, comes as a special niche skill. He or she has to make sure that this team is successful. By not having all the people working in the product reporting to that person. That is what we say, how do you influence without authority? How do you bring your attributes or traits in terms of, sometimes I say, Scrum Master should be rich. What is rich means? Can anybody understand? Responsible, influential, humble, and committed. It is that humbleness of the person which will makes or breaks everything. Because you don't get the people reporting in most of the organizations. Why people say individual contributor is, you have a niche skill to do something great to the teams, which the teams are not reporting to you. It is not a hierarchical thing. It is not a power center thing. It is the servant leadership all about in the organization. Your goal is to make your team successful by coaching them in a way. So that is the reason you see sometimes the Scrum Masters are hired on the contractual position sometimes, or as a consultants. Of course, nowadays, most of the organizations are realize the importance of the internal talent. They are grooming them to the Scrum Masters by telling them what is the right expectations from that role. End of the day, yes, it is a more or less a individual contributor role, though there could be a possibility of some reportings and all. Role is very specific to individual contribution.
Yeah, I mean, so we're just collecting the data and presenting in front of the management or the stakeholders.
That is only one part. Scrum Master is not a reporter. Scrum Master has got a lot of other things to do. Unfortunately, that is what again an anti-pattern people are using. Scrum Master services to coach the teams to mature them to the high performance. That is the ultimate goal of the Scrum Master.
Correct.
Not to set up the meetings to the people as a meeting organizer, meeting follow-up or tracker, minutes of meeting and all. These are all the trash things what organizations are using, unfortunately. We are not using the Scrum Masters to the right purpose, or we are not educating the Scrum Masters for the right reasons. There are many anti-patterns. Never ever use Scrum Masters for those things. And the same story applies to Agile coaches also. Don't ask them to report some numbers. Any data entry operator can report the numbers. You have a bigger thing to do in the enterprise. You need to make enterprise matured over a period of time. So these people are very niche in skill, very valuable assets. Don't use them for unnecessary things is what I mentioned also, some of the anti-patterns as well.
Thanks, Dr. Koti. I got. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, anybody?
I have one question, Dr. Koti. It is not directly related to the session we had, but there was previously that your book will be distributed to as there was initially there was a conversation. So is it still on, or because you were mentioning about your
the book you are talking about, Pragmatic Agility?
Yes.
I think Sri might have some updates on that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is still on. Unfortunately, I haven't got the approval yet, but the still is on. So as soon as we have an approval, everyone will get a copy of that one. So we have almost 500 over a book, so we can distribute, not to worry.
Thank you very much, Sriman. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri.
And Dr. Koti, regarding MVP, you are discussing sharing some information, right? Can I have some real scenario for better understanding, if you don't mind?
So basically, we are talking about a lot of great things to do, right, in our own space of products and everything what we are creating. So I will give one example what we did in the Otis elevators a couple of years back when I was in the United Technologies. Our goal was to create a smart building intelligence system, which means when you go to your office, everything is seamless. Right from you open the car door till you go to the room and come back, you need not to touch anything in the entire building premises. Right from security gate to the lift to your room, you are switching on the air conditioner at the temperature what you want, opening the rooms. We have, I don't know how many of you know, United Technologies own many products, fire and security products, locks and keys systems. If you go to Marriott Hotel or Hilton Hotel, all the door locks are maintained by the United Technologies. If you go to any firefighting system, all United Technologies. And of course, Otis elevator is the biggest thing on the elevator system. If you go to that Washington, 110 floors or some big building, Empire building, Otis elevator is controlled. So air conditions carrier, they have the best of the best product suite available. They thought, why don't you make this product more smart intelligence building system? That is a big vision. Then when you're talking about minimum viable product, what is the bare minimal thing you can think about it? I don't create everything overnight. I don't know how things are going to shape up. We don't want to invest everything in billions of dollars on the smart building systems. But what is the MVP we can think about it? Then we started thinking about, okay, once you go to the lift should recognize your face and it should know that which floor you need to go. That is the first level of programming we did. It will open the lift and again it will open at your floor. Once you go to your room door should recognize your face. It should automatically open and you should switch on your AC. So this is the flow we start off minimum viable product. The moment you go out of the car, you are going all the way to your room without touching anything and everything is maintained at what you need. And of course, then we start talking about so many other things to make a seamless experience later point in time. So MVP is the first set of things what is feasible to see real value. And if that is proven right, you will go to the next step and so on and so forth. When initial hypothesis proven right, we can make everything is automated and seamless. That's so you need to understand, in your context, what is the minimum viability you can think about on the overall vision of the product, what you wanted to build. Does it help?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Koti. I at least have the MVP understanding.
Yeah, again, depending upon our context, these things are very different, right? Your product and your vision can dictate very differently about your MVPs. What for somebody MVP may not be the real one for you, and vice versa. It is purely contextual. You need to understand to validate the hypothesis before you invest more money further.
Yeah, because more on the digitalizations. I'm thinking of, yeah, but it's a good.
What will happen to the future of neo banking? We don't know. Everybody is talking about neo banking, branchless, seamless experience. How do you control when the terrorists are coming and recruiting, becoming members of your bank, and hackers are coming? How are you going to take care of without knowing the people identity? That is the biggest threat in the global hacking and everything. So you need to understand the hypothesis and MVP on that as well. You cannot blindly go and give entry to any bank, any person to the bank, right? It's a big ecosystem. You need to be careful. How do you hypothesize that? How do you validate the minimum viability? Then you can extend to any kind of users later point in time. That could be MVP for you.
Yeah. It should be more strong AML and KYC systems. Yeah. Thanks. Dr.
Good. I think we are on the top of the hour also. I'm not sure if take care.
Thank you.
See you again.
Yes, and what are the possible solutions? It was very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Yes, it is important to understand the challenges that will help people actually to overcome their own context.
This was a short information, I can say. I don't think we cover much in that, because it's a very valuable transformation. Is a very big subject. So we are hoping that in future we'll have a good session to understand in detail. But
yes,
anything is very good. Thanks to the end, Sriman. Yeah.
Yes, sure, Mohammed, I appreciate that feedback as well. This is an attempt to give the overall big picture of the transformation. Of course, as I mentioned, every topic itself is a big deal. In future, if somebody is interested about how to do the feasibility study, what that means, then we can spend some time those kind of working sessions as well with some case studies. We will build those expert tags as well in future with more hands-on involving the people as well. We will try to tailor some of those things for future.
I have one question or suggestion. Is there any community of practice for Garranto, whoever have gone through these sessions? If we have some group who can continue to collaborate, that would be a good one. But I'm not sure whether it is already existing or is there any plan for that?
Certainly, we will be doing that. So we have to get confirmation from everyone before we start doing that. Certainly, we'll do that one.
Yeah, because we have so many practitioners, and it will really help us to share our knowledge and improve as we progress.
Yeah, sure. This would be every week will be going to happen. So certainly, we will have a great collaboration.
Okay, thank you. So I have other questions. Probably I will write to you separately. To you.
Sure.
And
Anytime, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And once again, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Koti. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Vijay. Appreciate your efforts as well.
Thank you, Dr. Koti and Sriman. And
yes.
Tina.
Thank you, Surya.
Thank you.